All right, guys, we are back over here in the rat section of the rodent room, or of the snake room, or I should say the rodent section of the snake room, because we're talking about ASFs and feeding ball pythons again. I had a couple people, and this is a follow up to the video from Monday about the differences between the different rodents when you're breeding them, when you're feeding them. A couple people had a question about ASF specifically in feeding them to your snakes and your snakes not switching back to anything else. And so this is a ball python specific video. I'm a ball python breeder. That is 95% of what I have in here. So this is most of my content is all ball python specific, especially this video. Now, I want to preface this whole video by saying something that's very important. When you buy a snake, when you buy a ball python, whether you have 1 or 100 or 1,000, your job is to just provide proper husbandry. And, that means the proper temperatures, the proper humidity, the proper substrates, the proper food, all that stuff, cleaning, everything. Your ball python needs to eat, and they are notoriously picky eaters. I don't have issues with any of my other snakes. I can feed them whatever I want, live, frozen, mouse, ASF, rat. They don't care. Ball pythons are picky by nature in our collections. I don't know if they're that way in the wild, but I 100% will tell you that they can be picky eaters when you buy them. When you have them in your collection, in your house, in your terrariums, you're probably going to come across a point in time where it's going to be difficult to feed that snake. So your job is to get them to eat. Your job is to provide proper husbandry. And the question that I had multiple times, and I've seen it before, and I've seen it brought up, and I think this is where the whole idea of once you switch your ball python to ASFs, they won't switch back to any other food, any other prey type. If you don't know what an ASF is, it's right here. This is an ASF. Right there. Those are ASFs. If you don't know what an ASF is, you probably should if you're breeding ball pythons. They're becoming more and more popular as a prey item for ball pythons. You should probably look into getting them if you don't have them, and if you can, because some states they're illegal, but that's a different story. I think it's almost like a misnomer that once they switch to ASFs, you can't get them back on other food, which I've found to be completely untrue. I think the problem is that people are seeing, especially some of these people with smaller sample sizes and smaller collections, is that their ball pythons that they have are just picky. And whether or not they attach onto ASFs as what they like, or mice or rats, they're just experiencing what a ball python is, which is a picky eater from time to time or all the time. I have some that don't care what they eat. I have some that are very specific what they eat. I have some that will only eat every other week. I have some that just take meals once a month and they're happy with that. Different snakes, different appetites. So I do not think that once you switch a snake to an ASF, it won't go back to anything else. It's possible, but it's also possible that once you put a snake on mice, they won't go to anything else. And it's also possible that once you put a ball python on rats, it won't go to anything else. It's not just an ASF specific issue. And I think people are kind of attaching this picky eater thing to ASF specifically, and they're not keeping in mind that ball pythons will do it with any prey item. I have some that will not switch back off of mice. I have some that won't take anything other than rats, which is kind of difficult for me because I'm switching away from breeding rats at all. So those ones better start liking something else. And I have some that now just eat that. These are snakes that weren't even necessarily fed ASFs before I bought them. I bought them as subadults or adults. I got them here. I tried to feed them rats. They wouldn't take them. Wouldn't take mice. I didn't actually get ASFs in my collection until last year. I had never fed an ASF in my snake room until last year. So I think April, May 2023. It's been a little over a year that I've had ASFs here. I had snakes that I purchased that were never fed ASFs before. I got them here. They refused to eat for me. I got ASFs in here, and they started taking them immediately and haven't stopped eating since then. So it doesn't matter. At the end of the day, your job, what they eat, your job is to get them to eat or to find what they like to eat. And sometimes that sucks. And especially for the people that can't get ASFs, I don't know what to tell you. If you have a snake that wants ASFs, whether or not they were fed them before or not, and they're not taking mice for you, and they're not taking rats for you, sometimes you don't have another option. Your only other option is to get ASFs. And that's what that snake likes. That's what that snake wants. That's what you have to feed it. Like, again, you're going to find the same issue whether it's mice or rats or ASFs. Hopefully you can get your snake to a point in time where it's not super picky. But as you can see, even this guy here, where you going, bro? This blackhead leopard Mojave, hypopied, black axanthic male. As you can see, he even has a little bite mark there from the last time he took an ASF. He has been all over the place with food. As you can see here, this means frozen, this means rats, this means ASFs. All of these tags are on here because he will frequently switch between all of them. Sometimes I'll get him to take frozen. He didn't take it last time. Sometimes he will take rats for me. I'm probably going to end up taking those off there or doubling them up as just ASF tags because I'm running out of yellows. And sometimes he'll take ASFs. So he's literally taken all three types of food. And this is all within the last 4 or 5 months. If he refuses frozen this week, I'm not going to keep trying to give him frozen. I'm going to try to switch it up. And sometimes the ball pythons get into weird patterns and weird habits where they want to do one thing over and over and over again. And sometimes I think being able to switch on the fly actually helps them to not get into a ASF only habit or a rat only habit or a mouse only habit. Sometimes just kind of if they refuse one week and they didn't have a huge meal, which you have to keep in mind. If this guy had like a giant rat and he's still got a big lump in his stomach a week later, obviously he's not going to be hungry. But let's just say I fed him a smaller meal and he's refusing the next week, then maybe I'll try that one sort of thing again. If he doesn't take it, the next week he's getting something else. And it gets him out of that habit of, I'm only going to eat this or I'm only going to eat that. And it makes it easier for you because when you get into these habits with some of these snakes where they're not eating for weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks, it's taking you longer to get that snake up to a healthy breeding size. And so, for instance, this guy, this lightning pied het clown male, he's a month and a half old maybe. He's already taken frozen for me. So I started him off, as I start off all of my hatchlings with mice. When I switched him over to the 1065, he immediately started taking ASFs. And actually, I believe the second meal I fed him in this tub was frozen, and he's been taking them ever since. And when you get them, personally, I like getting them on the frozen because I can give them a more consistent sized meal, and they're more readily available for me. They start growing faster. And he is probably 200 grams already, growing fast, definitely on pace to where I want him to be by the start of, him being able to breed probably next spring. So, your job is proper husbandry and getting your snakes fed. It's not forcing your snake to eat the one thing that you feel like feeding them. It's going to be your job as a ball python owner to be able to source different prey. You're not guaranteed to be able to feed them frozen thawed. So don't think that you're going to get a snake into your collection. And even if it ate frozen thawed before, when you get it, it doesn't mean it's going to take frozen thawed. If you bought a snake that was eating live rats from somebody else, doesn't mean when you get it home it's eating live rats. If you bought a snake from somebody else that was eating ASFs, it doesn't mean you're going to get it home and it's going to eat ASFs. So while it does matter what the previous owner was feeding the snake, it doesn't guarantee when you get it home that it's going to continue eating that same prey item. So you need to have frozen on hand. You need to be able to source rats or mice or ASFs to get that snake up to size, to breed it, or to just get it to grow it in a healthy manner if you're not breeding. There are definitely snakes that I've had here that I've purchased that I haven't been able to get to eat consistently. And then I've ended up actually selling them and saying, look, I bought this snake 4 or 5 months ago. My plan was to breed it because it was 1,000 grams when I bought it. I haven't been able to get it to eat. I'm selling it. Better luck. Hopefully you have better luck than I do. Obviously, you have to list honestly that snake's not eating or isn't eating regularly for you. I've had hatchlings that I've had a really hard time getting on the food here, where it's been like 6 months and I've been assist feeding them and they've taken meals sparingly on their own. And like in my Patreon, I've had people take, problem feeders off of me that I didn't feel like dealing with anymore and said, look, here, pay shipping. You have the snake. Good luck with it. They've gotten it and it's eaten that week for them. So it just didn't like where it was. It just needed to change the scenery. So, your snakes, ball pythons are picky. Tub size, aquarium size can make a big difference. Your husbandry has to be on point. Your substrate can make a difference. If they were on paper and you have them on cocoa chips or aspen or whatever, that can make a difference. The size of the hides you have in there can make a difference. But at the end of the day, I personally don't think it makes as much of a difference as people make it out to be about what the specific prey type is. And I don't think that if you feed your snakes ASFs, that it really matters. I don't think once you feed a snake an ASF, they won't eat anything else. I've switched snakes here between prey items without any problems. The ones that only prefer one specific thing are never going to eat anything else, in my opinion. But the ones that are able to switch between prey items are always going to switch between prey items. So I don't buy into that. You can't really be afraid of that because your job is just to make that sure that snake's eating. If you're breeding your own rodents, then breed ASFs. If you're worried about it, it's not a big deal. But if you buy a snake and it was eating a rat and you've had it for 2 months and it won't eat, and you've tried everything else and you've tried mice, what's your other option? You got to feed it ASFs, or you have to get rid of it. You got to sell it to somebody else, and maybe even at a loss. But you don't really have a whole lot of options at that point. You're kind of out of luck. You have to feed it ASFs. And if it gets feeding on ASFs for you and it wasn't feeding before, then that's your answer. There's nothing you can do about it. That snake needs to eat ASFs if that's the only thing that it will eat. And if that's the only thing it will eat, at least you got it eating. And that's the most important about all of this. If it'll take rats for you, great. If it'll take mice for you, great. But if it'll only take ASFs for you, then that is your only option, and there's nothing you can do about it. So you can't be worried about what specific food your snake is eating, because it's your job to make sure it is eating. And that means at any means necessary that you need to take to get it to eat. So be prepared for that. If you're buying a ball python or if you're starting to build a collection, you can't be picky with what they're eating because they will be picky. And you and the snake both can't be picky at the same damn time because they will not, it's not going to work out for you in your favor because that snake's going to win at the end of the day. And if it wants mice, then you need to give it mice. And if it wants ASFs, then you need to give it ASFs. And there's a good chance that snake isn't going to change its mind or switch over to something else. Some will. Some of you will have good luck. There may be even some of you that have some tricks up your sleeve and you're able to do it on the fly and never have any issues. There's a lot of snakes in here for me that will switch back and forth, and there's a lot that won't. But it doesn't matter to me because my job is to get food in their bellies, not to decide what I want them to eat.